had the River One sitting in the shed, and it wasn't online. Like I couldn't see it or whatever. And then I realized once I went in the shed, like out to it, it's like it had dropped to 0 and it had gotten cold. So I was like, all right, let me bring it in the house. And then all of a sudden it shows the little like out too cold symbol.
Okay. Yeah.
Let it warm up.
Suspicion maybe is the right.
I was like, all right, which I'm like, yeah, sure. Yeah, that happens. I've had that happen before. Good, you're protecting yourself. Then I go to plug it in.
Welcome to I Like Batteries, the show where we explore the world of batteries. I'm Jeff Lynch.
And I'm Mike Muldoon. Happy New Year, Jeff Lynch.
Happy New Year, Mike.
Yeah, as we said, the last episode, if you listened to it when we released it right on the end of the year, congratulations for you, but as one of our listeners, or all of our listeners. But if you're listening to it in 2025, this is maybe your second episode of 2025, but it's our first for recording.
Indeed, and thank you for your holiday card. It was a lovely card. Mine's still being printed.
Oh, okay. Oh, you just sent me pictures, so I thought that was...
I know.
I wasn't sure if you were just going all digital, but yeah.
There'll be a formal... We are reducing the amount of paper we're throwing through the mail, but...
Sure. Which also makes it feel somewhat more special when you get something in the mail. Somebody was saying...
There you go. Exactly.
Which is fun. Which we can still do these things, which is good. And for all of you that... hopefully you're having a happy new year, happy 2025. Hopefully your batteries are fully charged or at least 80%. And we'll get to that My Little Bit battery woes later in the show, but... You know, I had some charging issues, and maybe are still having some charging issues. But Jeff, you know what was interesting as I prep for the show, and we always do. You know, and as I'm prepping for the new year, as I'm launching a new thing, kind of batteries and chemicals and our whole bodies and how they work, which I'm super excited about. More to come, maybe. Clearly, that's a different show, but somewhat related. But
it could have that might have an associated podcast as well.
And I'm pretty darn sure there's going to be an associated podcast about this for sure. And that's such a cool thing going forward. But we're going to talk about batteries that are in vehicles and how driving them, you know, we always thought like drive it well, treat your battery well and everything else. Like, but we came upon an article that said, and it's link baiting, but I'm going to read it to you folks. This is from Autotopian, which I'm not familiar with, but you know, credit to them, Autotopian. Driving your EV like a lunatic might help its batteries last longer. Stanford study says. So it's the Stanford study said that came out here. And just breaking down some of this, and then we'll get Jeff's reaction to this. Because, I mean, Jeff likes to drive his cars a little bit differently than probably I drive my cars. Would you agree?
Yes, they are currently both still ICE cars, however.
They're ICE cars, right? But
I have rented the EVs, which we've talked about on previous.
We have talked about, yeah. And so what it says is, to our surprise, real driving with frequent acceleration, braking that charges the batteries a bit, stopping to pop into a store, and letting the batteries rest for an hour's time helps batteries last longer than we thought based upon industry standard lab tests. And let's get some data behind that. If we look at the scientists at SLAC, the Stanford Battery Center, called this dynamic cycling. It turns out the real-world uses may result in much longer battery lifespans than people previously thought. Study reports that it can result in as much as 38% longer battery lifespan than seen under normal constant current testing. So that's pretty good. So 22 commercial lithium-ion batteries for more than 2 years across the discharge profiles. So that's pretty interesting. It said, pressing the pedal with your foot hard does not speed up aging. If anything, it slows it down. So there you go. I'm gonna toss that right to you and say, what's your thoughts on that, Jeff? So
this is this reminds me of an old Mac Geek Gab podcast that Dave Hamilton and company did when we were talking about laptop batteries in the years and years ago when Fruit Juice was alive. And basically, it was like he did a survey and asked people about how their batteries were, what the lifespan of their batteries were and their current charge percentages, et cetera, and discovered that basically you didn't have to treat your battery a certain way, that actually just using your battery sort of in a haphazard, random way would increase its longevity. And this actually reminds me of that because it aligns with that kind of thinking.
Yeah, and I think as we talk about and think about our history and our God rest his soul, John B. Goodenough, right, who father or grandfather, maybe we say, of lithium-ion batteries, it's still not a long time, right? We look at the 90s and now we're 2025, 35 years. There's not a lot of time to get all the data we need to do or test batteries out to be able to see, you know, how they are and what's going on with that. But as we said, as we look at the show, we love doing this. We love finding articles because we didn't think, I guess I would say happy 6th year of the show too. Now that I'm coming to that, right? When we actually started the podcast in January 2020, we didn't think we'd have enough content to talk about or all the things. We mentioned that before, but clearly more and more and more things come up about this. And the other thing that we mentioned on the show, and I've gotten better about that, if you've got some questions or got some feedback, please feel free to email us, power@ilikebatteries.com. And you as our listeners are the power for our show. And that's the reason, in essence, we actually put the email address at power@ilikebatteries.com, because you're the power, and your questions, all the things that when we send something back to you, that helps us, give us a little bit more juice and charges us up. And with that, Jeff, I want to say we got a really nice email from one of our listeners. And, I wanted to give credit here because it's something new year, new type of thing, is kind of give some of that to one of our listeners. So with that, you want to read a little bit of what one of our listeners said?
I'll read the whole thing. Why not?
Okay, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, so we received an email from Paul. So Paul, thank you very much for an email titled "Huge Fan, Wishing Best for 2025." And we, as we do, we wish everyone a happy 2025. So here goes. It says, "Hello, Jeff and Mike. Paul from Northern California here. I found your show fairly recently and haven't had a chance to listen to all of your episodes yet. Slowly getting there, though. Thank you for having a show about batteries. There is not enough content on the web for people like us who love batteries. Huge fan of your show. I grew up in the late 80s and 90s, spent my childhood looking forward to going to Radio Shack so I could buy batteries to power my flashlights. I got to use the nickel metal hydride cell phones in the late 90s, using an old Nokia brick phone. It wasn't until Anker came around that I became a fan of rechargeable lithium-ion batteries. I've got an office full of Anker batteries, currently using an Anker C1000 with a BP1000 LFP in parentheses there. We can mention what that is in a moment. To offload my office power during peak hours, so 3 p.m. to 12 a.m. automatically with Wi-Fi plugs. Sounds like a little bit like what you do, Mike, with all of the movement of electrons over there in the shed.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, this is just a hobby and for fun. My wife and I rent, won't be owning a house in California ever, parenthetically. But we both own Teslas, a 2018 Model 3 and a 2024 Model 3. Big fan of EVs. Cost of electricity here in California is always a hot topic for us. I dream of having solar and house battery backup someday. I use coconut battery and al dente on my MacBook Pro to keep my laptop battery happy. After 3+ years of heavy daily usage, it still has 97% health, 100% according to Apple. I have a huge backstory on that. Someday we'll talk about. I actually used Jeff's fruit juice app back in the day. Thank you very much. Still have it installed today. My iPhone Max's charge is limited to 80%, and my remote desk job allows me to keep it plugged in most of the day. 103% battery health after 126 cycles and almost a year and a half. And then he sent us pictures of his 2 Anker power banks with 99 and 100% battery health, respectively. Please keep up the great work of doing podcasts. Love hearing about solar, batteries, EVs, snowblowers, and anything else you guys talk about. Thank you for your time you put into the podcast. Looking forward to 2025 with you all. Signed.
So we just have to say thank you. It's interesting. I would say, and as I'm going through a kind of a journey here for healthcare and trying to look at how I refine using my skills and who I'm helping and whatnot. I just want to say thank you for your email, because you are like one of our bullseye listeners, as I would call it. And the reason I say that is if we're looking at that dartboard, we're obviously speaking right to you in terms of liking batteries, going to Radio Shack, all these things. So this is why we want to just send a thank you. And hopefully you listen to this episode and you're like, my goodness, they read my email. And that charges you up for a day. And I think that's how we look at the charge ecosystem and how things go. So that's awesome. We appreciate it. And we hope you have a great 2025 and we continue to produce some really good content. We've got some good things planned. I'm trying to line up some interviews and almost go back in the day to some of our previous interviews and say, where
Absolutely.
Are they now? And that's the
That'd
fun thing about
That'd be so fun.
Oh, it's so fun because we've done it for so long. Like, well, here's where we're at. We've done the show. Where are you now? And I think that just will spark a bunch of listeners to kind of go back and listen to this and get the sense of some of these companies, what they're going. So I'm really excited for 2025. I want to segue though, and that's that email and then coming in is a good segue to here, because one of my first, I would call it big boy power stations, is my EcoFlow River. And my river I have in the battery shed. It was in the house for a while. Charge it via solar, multiple charge cycles, and I have multiple pieces of EcoFlow. Obviously, my Wave 2, my Delta, and it had gotten cold in the battery shed. And I usually monitor all of my batteries via Wi-Fi, look at the app, and got busy around the holidays. Noticed the River One, what's a River One Max, because I did add another battery. Wasn't on Wi-Fi, and I'd probably seen it a low, maybe I had 5%. It was telling me. So I went out to the shed and looked at it, and it's like, oh, it's kind of low, and it was cold in the shed. I don't remember the temperature. It was probably in the low 30s or so. And I went to try to plug it into solar since it was somewhat sunny, and it said no way. It gave me the little cold battery symbol. Okay, sure. Bring it in the house. Yeah, bring it in the house. It was warm. I felt it was cold. Let's put it in the house for a little bit, let it get warm, and then I'll charge it over AC. So I let it get warm. I plug it in, and it starts the little circle that represents how far the battery. It says 0. I'm like, oh, well, it must have got all the way down. And it starts spinning, and it's going. I was like, okay, so it's not giving me the cold battery symbol. It spins 3 times, and then the output says off. And I know that's what it looks like if I were to manually shut it off.
Press and hold the button. Yeah, exactly.
Press and hold the button.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So then it comes on again, still plugged in, and shows it again.
Oh, it did it by itself. It was like
it did it by itself. Turned itself back on.
Okay.
Yeah. And then it does it again. And I'm like, this feels bad. This feels bad. So it did it like 4 or 5 times, and then the screen shut off. And so I unplug it, and I press the power button, and the screen won't come on.
Mm-hmm. It's got nothing.
I'm like, this is not good. This is not charge in there. This is bad. So I did a little research, looked at what the reset was. I was like, okay, reset is press the light button and the DC button and hold. So plug it in and do that. So I plug it in and do that. And then all of a sudden, it goes and it like demonstrates the standpoint that it resets. And then the bottom little battery that I've attached to Max kind of goes and gets light. The light bar comes on.
Yep.
It's red, which I'm like, oh, that's not good either.
Yeah.
and then it shows it like it's charging. It says the off, and it shuts off. Does it again and off, and the light bar goes, and it does it 3 times, and that's it. And so it's been doing that, and I've tried to go ahead and do power it via DC and AC, and neither one of them works.
Oh, this is disappointing.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to have to see what actually happens with how we can make that a little better.
Yeah. So Mike and I pre-show were talking about debugging this, and one way we've talked about it is maybe Mike will disassemble the external battery and give it to me to see if it will charge on my river if I attach it there, and if it does, then I'll send it back to Mike and see if it will power his main station. In the meantime, Mike is also, once that battery is removed, we'll see if the main charge or the main river will take a charge from AC or DC.
So yeah, exactly. I think that's what I'm going to do. I have one other one, which is I think I'm going to contact EcoFlow support, even though I know it's out of warranty. And that's the other piece is this may be, I want to go back and research when I actually got this. I don't think it's hit its max charge cycles, but it's probably this other piece for our listeners. And I know I'm going to give one to me for being bad about battery maintenance. I let it drop too low, and I kind of knew that. And I let it drop too low, and it had been too cold, right? So it may have been the 2 factors of those that may have done something.
The BMS should have taken care of that.
Yeah, I agree. The BMS should have done some things in protection mode and whatnot, but I also will take it on myself. I should have done better maintenance on that, and it would have been better. But,
and had the shed gotten below freezing for extended periods of time?
I mean, it is now, but even if it does that, I always make sure that the batteries are in good shape, meaning like they're above a certain temperature.
Yeah.
Right. So normally they are. And normally what I would do is I would just turn on, but it's kind of interesting. My daisy chain, normally what happens is one charges the other. And it was like, obviously that fell out of the sequence.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't charge up and this is honestly for 2025, a little bit of my battery box in the shed, because the shed doesn't get cold. I mean, it's not heated all the time.
Right.
Is that I'm building this little battery box to put one of the seed warmers underneath the Delta, because the Delta is really the key part of this equation. And I'll be honest with you, thank you again, because what the Delta does is it powers the little hydronic heater.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The DeLonghi hydronic heater that you got, because that's the key to the equation, right? So I figured this one out. On low, it does about 700 watts. On medium, it's about 886, and then it goes high, and it's probably about 1200. Medium's the perfect amount because it takes it about 10 minutes for that to get warm. And then obviously I could shut it off and it continues to produce heat.
It continues to radiate the heat out.
So when I do that, I warm it up to there, gets the shed good, and then I can use the Wave 2, because the Wave 2 kind of requires that 41 degrees in order to be able to be most efficient. Below 41, it because of that propane, and we can go into some further shows. In fact, this is one of the things that somebody had said to me, hey, you should do a video of the shed. I was like, yes, I should do a video.
Yes, you should.
This is where like the YouTube channel has to get better, because thank you folks for listening, but sometimes it's hard to verbally describe these things. And so it's just figuring that, and more than happy to take suggestions of how to be able to improve that. But this is good and bad, because this is the real world situations of temperature changes and effects on battery. This is showing us what it does. And I do think it was the combo of too low plus cold, because I've had cold before where it's at 10% and it's like, oh, it won't charge, and it's bring it in the house, let it warm up,
which makes sense,
and then charge up. I think it's almost like it got to that, and we've all seen batteries, even on our laptops. It gets too low and it's like it can't. And I would love to research more what that is, because that happens with batteries. When they get too low, they just can't accept the charge. So I don't think it's charge cycle. I think it's almost like it's gotten to this low charge state. And I don't know if that's the BMS or if that's the actual battery, but more than happy to listen to your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I would think it'd be more BMS related, but
I agree.
It depends. It depends how those batteries are put together, right? And and if there's any individual control over the cells inside the modules. So I
agreed, and I think this is where I think we have an effective test that you described that we're going to try and do. This is. Folks, we have this continuing saga of like listening to sitcoms and things like, hey, what's next episode? Will it work? Will they have this? So this is a good one for Jeff and I to be able to do there. But any other battery stories before we kind of wrap the first episode of the new year, so to speak, recording? But like I said, this might be a
battery stories. I don't think so. I still have to send my Snow Joe battery reply email, because they want pictures or video or something of the batteries not charging. So there's still the one sitting outside. So it's clearly not going to be doing anything, but the other ones I have to throw on the chargers and take pictures. I just, holidays, haven't gotten around to that.
And you know what's awesome about this? This is my YouTube today. I am going to go post the video that I took of the river. Before I do this, taking it apart, so that way folks can see what this looks like. I'll talk it through. We'll throw that on YouTube. The goal is to get a little bit better with putting some content video-wise on YouTube. So none better than a little bit of a quote-unquote short, right?
Yeah, sure.
Of nice. Throwing that up there, take a look at it. And folks, if you have something, you've experienced this, feel free to email powered@lightbatteries.com. Help us out as too. We hopefully help you a bit. Or comment on the video once I get that up and going, be able to see. And Jeff and I will hopefully have another follow-up video of like, hey, this is what happened when we did these things. But I think we're using a good troubleshooting process right here to try. We're eliminating variables, as they say. Yeah, because I'm very interested to see if I give you the other battery to see if yours will charge it, because yours is working. So if that does, it eliminates that as a factor. And then I think what happens too is, I'm really curious to see if then we realign them. If that has power, what happens to me? Yeah. And if both of them don't work, then I'm very head scratching because obviously don't break my river, Mike. Yeah, well, the secondary one is newer than my river one, because I got it after. Yeah. Well, that's okay. Yeah, no, but that's good. But hopefully, like I said, folks, hopefully you have a good first week. Probably, if you're listening to this, might be your second week of the year. Depends.
It's coming out the second week, so it wouldn't be able to listen to the first week.
Second full week of the year. But hopefully, you're having a good start to the new year. Hopefully, you're charging your batteries up. Hopefully, you are staying warm in winter storms, because it has been cold in the Northeast. It's definitely winter for sure, temperature-wise.
It is, and it's supposed to be winter now, so that's a good thing.
That is true, definitely. But stay fully charged, or at least 80%. Have a great week.